All right, hello everyone. This is our final class video for the week. Today is Wednesday, April 8th, 2020, our last day of class as well before Easter break. Um, at the start of this week, I kind of gave you guys a bit of an overview. We had our quiz yesterday. You have your assignment on faith and Despicable Me, which is due by 4 p.m. today. And we do not have class tomorrow or Friday. Okay, what this means is this is going to be your last kind of thing I'm going to have you guys do before we go on break. For all of you tuning in, great to have you here. Remember earlier on this week we talked about what is faith? What is faith? Faith is a supernatural gift of God that leads to knowledge of heart and mind of what God has revealed, as well as trust of God as a friend, a relationship. And our knowledge and our trust leads us to assurance, okay? Assurance, which basically means that we're confident that God is trustworthy, that the promises he has made to us will not be broken or will not go empty. So the goal of faith is assurance, okay? Based on knowledge and our trust. But ultimately, it all comes back to God because we can't create faith. Faith is actually a grace that we receive by God. So not only does God want to reveal himself to us, he wants to help us to come to believe in who he is. But why should we have faith in what God has revealed in the first place? This is a really good question. Why should we believe anything that God communicates to us? Well, let's back up a second and think about, why do we trust in people, generally speaking? Why do we trust? Why do we place our confidence in things outside of ourselves? Isn't that kind of a dangerous thing to do? Why should we trust someone? Well, a couple of things that I thought of is that we generally trust people who are credible, meaning like they're not fools. They know what they're talking about. Right now, you guys are trusting in what our school has to say about your health. You're trusting in what your parents are directing you to do during this really difficult time of this virus. And you're also trusting in our government. Those are examples of people who are credible in your life. We also trust people who have witnessed to the truth, okay? So we're going to get back to that in a moment, but that's really important to keep in mind. And last, pardon my allergies, we also trust in people who we know deeply care about us and want what's best for us. So again, going back to this whole idea of trust, that we trust people who know what they're talking about, who have witnessed to some kind of a truth, and we also trust in people who we know care about us and want our best. So today's homework, you guys looked at the homework due for today. You guys looked at a video clip from one of my favorite movies, Despicable Me. And Despicable Me, it's a great show. I think they've made like 3 or 4 now. You guys probably know that better than me. But the first Despicable Me, kind of toward the end of the movie, there's this scene between Groot, he's the guy down here, and the kids that he becomes friends with during the course of the movie. And not to give the whole movie away, but something happens in between the kids and Groot, causing them to kind of lose their trust and their faith in Groot. But he comes after them and tries to rescue them from basically the bad guy of the show. And this is kind of the end of the show where they're trying to get away from the bad guy, and Groot has come after them to rescue them. And during this moment, Groot asks the kids to jump, or to climb out upon that little tightrope there and come toward him. And they're called to trust. And he tells them, you have to jump. I'm going to catch you. You have to trust that I will. And during the moment, one of the kids, specifically Margot, who's the oldest of the siblings, she's very uncertain. And this is kind of the look on her face in this moment. And she's thinking in that moment, okay, Groot has, he hasn't been perfect. He's betrayed us in the past, and I'm not really sure that I can trust him. But Groot is constantly trying to reassure her in this really dramatic moment that it'll be okay. I promise I'm going to catch you. You have to trust me. You have to believe me. I'm sorry for what happened in the past, but during this moment, I need you to believe that I'm going to catch you. And so she does jump, Um, and he does promise that he's going to catch her and never let her go, and he happens to save the day and saves her. And I think this is a great example of kind of what kind of a good example of what faith looks like in action. Someone who has to make that decision and that choice to make that leap of trusting in what this authority figure, in this case it's Groot, is revealing to them, that you have to trust in who I am, and I promise I'm going to catch you. In our faith life, again, when we trust God like a friend, He's going to call us to things and tell us things about Himself that we're called to respond to in faith. And this leap of faith is based on our trust that this person who is calling us to that is trustworthy. So another good example, another way of looking at this is let's imagine. I don't know how many siblings you guys all have, but let's say you get a knock on your door one day during this coronavirus pandemic, and someone comes up to your door, and it's a young boy. Let's say he's 6 or 7 years old, and he's knocking on your door, and you talk to him. You've never seen him before, don't know who he is, and it turns out he tells you that he is your long lost little brother. Okay, he is come from far away, and he's been looking for you guys for years, and finally he's found his way back home, and you're kind of, well, understandably, you're kind of very, perplexed and confused and not really certain what to think, whether you even want to let this kid in your home, whether it's some kind of a con man who's behind this and is trying to, I don't know, manipulate you in some way. So you're definitely and understandably suspicious. So in this first case, you'd kind of be very unwilling to believe this kid because you've never seen him before and you don't even know who the heck he is. Let's take the same example, but this time the same situation happens and your parents happen to be at home. And your parents, after you talk to this kid who's knocked down your door, your parents react shocked and surprised, and the kid goes away, and then they sit you down and they explain to you everything that happens and explains who this little boy is and reveals to you that he is in fact your long lost little brother. Now in that moment, it's definitely different from this first scenario where your parents aren't in the picture. When your parents are in this picture in this moment, they ask you to trust and believe in what they're telling you. They're asking you to trust and believe something that is so monumental and earth-shattering for your life. The fact that you have a long-lost little brother, that's super profound. And like you have this choice in this moment: do I believe in what mom and dad have told me? And you have a choice based on their trustworthiness, whether to believe them or not. And again, going back to it, we trust in people whom are credible and also whom we know care about us and want what's best for us. So in this moment, you're much more likely to believe what this little boy has to say because your parents have basically backed him up and your parents are trustworthy. Okay? So faith is a lot like that. A couple of my favorite examples of faith in Scripture. We talked about this one last semester. The example of Abraham sacrificing Isaac, and this is an act of faith because Abraham knew that God wanted what was best for him. God had continually showed up time and time again, providing for Abraham, and he trusted God in such a radical way. Okay, the example of Saint Peter walking on water. Peter, a lot of people see Peter as a failure in this moment, but Peter is actually the only guy from the boat who's willing to get out and try to walk on water towards Jesus. Okay, and even though he stumbled and slipped, he was willing and brave enough to trust in Jesus to walk out upon the water toward him. Okay, and then last, even Jesus himself. We're here in Holy Week. Jesus Christ. We think of him, as this very, godly man. He himself made a sort of act of faith in the Garden of Gethsemane, where he said, "Father, let this cup pass from me, but nevertheless, not my will be done, but yours." So he's trusting in God, in his Father in heaven, and he's saying, "God, look, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm afraid. I'm experiencing all the sorrow of sin, and they're coming after me. They're going to arrest me. They're going to torture me and kill me. let this pass from me, but if it is your will, God, I trust in you. This is faith in action. Um, Ultimately, the act of faith, you guys, comes down to trusting in the credibility of who reveals the truth to you. Okay, so all of these stories are kind of examples of that fact, that faith isn't a sort of uh, you know isn't in any sort of a leap, but it does challenge us to trust in whoever is calling us into belief. So if God reveals himself to us, how much more should we respond to him? God himself has revealed his life to us through Jesus Christ. So trusting in what he says is so much more important than what some silly cartoon character says, or even what our parents reveal to us. So if God communicates his life to us, we should respond in faith. Not that that's easy, but because God is trustworthy and God is who he says he is, we should respond because of who he is, because he is the most credible person, the most credible uh, being and creator of anything else. Okay. Um, and then last, a note about the church. The church is the one who safeguards what God has revealed through Jesus Christ. So the church is promulgating and promoting and spreading what Christ has revealed about God to us. He communicates that revelation to us through scripture and tradition. So our trust in what the church teaches is ultimately our trust in what God has revealed to us. Okay. So last, the act of faith. Faith is ultimately a choice. It's not a vague feeling. It's not a sixth sense that goes beyond our normal our normal five senses, but rather it really is a choice, which is an act of our will. Okay, our will is the the uniquely human thing about us that allows us to choose things, to do something or not to do something. So it is a choice that moves our minds, because faith has to do with truths that God reveals. Truths have to do with the mind. Ultimately, so faith is a choice that moves our minds to believe the truths that God communicates to us. Say some examples: believing in the doctrine of the Holy Trinity, the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist, that Jesus is both God and man, etc., etc. All of the church's doctrine. Again, ultimately going back to the church is credible because Jesus Christ founded that church, and the church safeguards the revelation of Jesus Christ through her scripture and through her tradition. Okay. Um, so that's kind of my takeaways on faith. Again, ultimately, it comes back to trusting in that person who reveals those truths to us, whether that be Groot, our parents, or even those great examples of faith in Scripture. That's all I have for you guys for today. Again, if you haven't completed today's homework assignment, it's due by 4 p.m. Turn in over on Google Classroom. I also posted a video that I think is really great for Holy Week that also kind of connects back to this difficult situation that we're in with the coronavirus. And also, for those of you who tuned in, a great extra little bonus if you shoot me a Blackbaud message by the end of the day today showing me that you watched this video. Send me a message with the secret code phrase of "the Easter Bunny smells." So send me that phrase, "the Easter Bunny smells," by the end of the day today, and I'll give you guys one bonus point on yesterday's quiz grade, which I am in the process of grading. So have a blessed, safe, happy Easter break. I'll see you guys not next week, but the week after. And again, do enjoy your break, and God bless.